Hi there. Like my jammy jams? Used to have like a mistletoe hanging right in front of my face, but I couldn't actually sleep in it, so I took the mistletoe off. I have decided that I'm going to read you some stories, and you just have to deal with listening to me read it. I'm going to prop this up so it's in my face, but it's not going to happen. Oh, if I just back up like a human, then I'm okay. Okay, so, whoa! Never mind. Okay. Nice little bedtime story from the Chamber of Horrors. This is my favorite spooky story, and I reference it all the time, which is why I'm sharing it with you, so that when I reference it, you'll understand it from now on. You can't find this anywhere besides this book, unless you are really looking for it, and then good luck to you. The Cloth of Madness by Seabury Quinn. And no, I did not name Quinn after him. But I should tell people that, because that's kind of cool. I named Quinn because we've always liked the name Quinn. We were going to use Mason Quinn, but then Mason went to #1 in Missouri and #2 in the U.S. And we're like, we're not going to use a name that's common. And so Quinn got relegated off somewhere, and we decided to use it for our 5th child because that's what Quinn means, is 5th child. So. James Alvarez, the noted interior decorator, was dying. His family physician knew it. The neat, white-starched nurse, almost waspish in her impersonal devotion to her professional duties, knew it. The eminent graduate of Hopkins and Vienna called into consultation, whose fee would be more than the annual maintenance of a poor ward in the city hospital, knew it. Alvarez's next of kin, a niece and nephew, hastily summoned from halfway across the continent, knew it. And, which was most important of all, Jameson Alvarez knew it. The last rays of the December sun slanted through the casement of the sick man's room, falling directly upon the bed and illuminating his face as though with a rosy spotlight.
Mom.
This was fitting and proper, since he was the principal character in the short tragedy about to be acted. What is it, dear?
Something. Someone's too young and too big.
Those pants are your pants. You need to just put them on. The tag goes in the back, and just step into them and pull them up. There you go. Now the other leg.
Huh.
Dun 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 dun. Oh, look, it fits.
Every time I did it.
Okay, I'm gonna continue reading my spook story. No, you don't need my 3DS. You're not going to play on it. It was not an ill-looking face the afternoon sun bent its brief valedictory on. Jameson Alvarez's plentiful hair was iron gray in color. Oh, it's spelled like color, like the British spelling. Where was I? And swept up from his high, placid forehead in an even-crusted pompadour. His eyebrows were heavy and intensely black, and the deep-set eyes beneath them were as gray as frosted glass. Yes, dear, what is it?
Can you bring my hair?
Yeah, I'll put it. Why do you need... are you going to sleep with jingle bells in your hair?
Yeah.
Jingle bells, Batman smells, Robin laid an egg. Cascabellis, tra-la-la-la-la. There you go. I already said that one. While his long illness had etched fine lines about the corners of his eyes and the ends of his narrow lips, it had not robbed his cheeks of their rich olive coloring. Ew, what color? I wouldn't want olive colored cheeks. Why am I shouldn't even be adding to this. I should just be reading it straight up. I'm not used to reading this one aloud. I really ought to do something with my eyebrows before I do this again. More in mascara though. See how pretty my eyelashes are? This side looks like it needs more than this side. I must have been rubbing this side. Let me rub this one and make it match. Better? No, it's not better at all. And even in the antechamber of death, his mouth retained its firm, almost cruel set. In a far corner of the room, a family physician whispered fussily to the next of kin. Waiting for a patient to die is a tiresome business, especially when one is hungry, and when one expects to have roast lamb and caper sauce for dinner. Yes, he was saying. Mr. Alverde has had a great deal of trouble the last year, a very great deal of trouble, and he has never been the same since that terrible affliction fell upon his wife and his friend at his country place in the Highlands. A tragedy, my dear young friends, a very great tragedy, quite enough to break anyone's health. I've no doubt that Mr. Alverde's present illness is directly traceable to that unfortunate occurrence. No doubt whatsoever. Alverde's wasted, nervous hands paused a minute in their restless fumbling at his bedclothes. His thin, straight lips twisted a moment in an inscrutable smile, and his pale lids slowly lowered till they nearly hid his roving gray eyes. With that unwonted sharpening of the senses which often comes to those weakened in body, he had heard the doctor's whispered conversation. The mention of that June morning when his wife and friend had been discovered in their rooms, hopelessly imbecile, brought no grimace of horror to the sick man's face. Rather, he smiled whimsically to himself, as if there was something not altogether unpleasing to him in the memory. The afternoon sun sank behind the lines of hills across the river. The great specialist got into his fur-lined overcoat and his imported motor car and drove home. The family physician left instructions to be called immediately if there was any change in Mr. Alverde's condition, and went home to his lamb and capers. The next of kin tiptoed downstairs to dinner, and Jameson Alverde was left alone with his thoughts and the white-clad nurse. Nurse, Alverde raised himself slightly on one elbow, open the lower left-hand drawer of the desk and bring me the little black book you'll find there. Now, give me my fountain pen, please, he directed, when the sharp-featured girl had brought the book and adjusted the pillows behind his back. The nurse withdrew to the window, watching the last spots of sunlight on the river, and Alverde commenced to scribble on the flyleaf of the book before him. As he wrote, difficult for he was very weak, the same faintly reminiscent smile he had worn in the afternoon settled again on his tight-pressed lips. Three-quarters of an hour his pen travelled laboriously over the book's blank leaf. Then, with a faint sigh of satisfaction, as at a task well done, Jameson Alverde laid back upon his pillow. The nurse crossed the room to remove the book and pen, paused a second, looking into her patient's face, then hurried to the telephone to call the family physician. She might have saved herself the trouble and allowed the good doctor to finish his dinner in peace. Jameson Alverde had no need of his services, or of any other physicians. Jameson Alverde was dead. Dun, dun, dun. The customary 3 days elapsed, and in the morning of the 4th they took Jameson Alverde from his residence on the drive to a new home in Shadow Lawns. It was a very stylish and dignified funeral, for Alverde had left a respectable estate, and the high-priced funeral director who conducted the obsequies, I'm unfamiliar with that word, obsequies, understood his business thoroughly. On the 5th evening, Alverde's attorney, a dapper little man, much addicted to wing collars and neat double-breasted jackets, called and read the deceased client's last will and testament to the next of kin, who, as was expected, proved to be his residuary legatees. 1/3 of the estate having been left the dead man's wife, Then the lawyer took up the business of straightening out Alverte's affairs. "It will be necessary," he informed them, stuffing the will back into his saddle leather brief bag, "to let me have all of your uncle's papers which are in the house." "The only papers of Uncle Jameson's we found in the house are bound in that little black book," the niece remarked. "He'd been writing in it just before he died." When the little black book was forthcoming and he had tucked it in his overcoat pocket, the lawyer seated himself in his automobile and started on his homeward trip. Before the motor had traversed 2 blocks, he took out the slender volume and opened it. He was no waster of time. His capacity for making every minute count had won him his enviable standing at the bar. The first words which struck his eye were written in a weak, straggling hand, the words Jameson Arvate had penned on the night of his death. "What the devil!" the lawyer exclaimed, as he slowly spelt out the sprawling characters of the inscription. "Did the old fool try to make another will on his deathbed? I, James Alverte, being of sound mind and memory, which is more than some I know are, but being weakened in body, and about to die, do declare the following statement to be true explanation of the mental derangement which occurred to my wife Edith and my friend Hector Fuller at my county place last summer. My one regret in publishing this memoir is that I shall not be present to hear the comments of the fools who have sympathized with me in my affliction." "Humph!" The lawyer turned the scribbled flyleaf over. Following the leaf upon which the scrawling introduction was scratched, the book was written in firm, clear hand, the hand Alverte had penned in health. The pages were filled with detached paragraphs like diary entries, but undated. The first sheet was torn diagonally across so that the first sentence was incomplete. "Somewhat cool for this time of year. Excepting the tower, the house is fully completed, and we shall live here while the carpenters are finishing up. I've asked Hector Fuller up for the weekend. Edith protested against his coming. With every woman's loathing of the unattainable, she has taken his impregnable bachelorhood as a deliberate affront. But Fuller is my friend, and whether Edith is pleased with his visit or not is of no moment to me. This is my house, and Edith is my wife, and I mean to be master of both." Fuller came this afternoon. I watched Edith narrowly when she greeted him, and I had determined to cut her allowance in 2 if she were to be discourteous to him. She blushed to the root of her hair when she gave him her hand, and— "What the heck? Stop that!"